Welcome back to Reddit Tales by Uncle Sammy. I see you, I appreciate you, and I'm thankful you subscribed and keep showing up. This space is built on your insights. Leave your thoughts and lessons below. Now, cue the tension, cue the truth. Let's get into it. The cruelest thing Soleil did was leave me the same day I got laid off, look me in the eyes in a cold parking lot, and say, "I'm done. You're nothing without your job." Like the years we built meant nothing the second my paycheck stopped. She didn't argue, didn't hesitate, didn't even pretend to care. She just took my spare keys, tossed a prenuptial agreement onto my windshield like a receipt, and walked away with the kind of calm you only have when you've been planning your exit for a long time. Here's how it happened. The day Soleil Whitlock left me was the same day my badge stopped working. Security walked me out of the glass lobby in Cleveland like I had stolen air, even though I had given that company 12 straight years. I told her, steady, that I'd been laid off. She stood in the parking lot with her coat cinched tight, tapping acrylic nails against her phone case, a habit she had whenever she was about to lie. She looked me over once and said, "I'm done. You're nothing without your job," then reached for a car door and vanished. Lake Erie wind cut through my suit, and traffic hissed on asphalt along Superior Avenue. Soleil didn't walk to my car to comfort me. She walked to take control. She reached into my hand, plucked my spare keys like they were hers, and slid them into her tote without asking. Then she flung a thick envelope across my windshield, where it caught under the wiper and shuddered in the sleet. My name sat on it in her neat handwriting, neat as a label. I opened it with numb fingers and found a prenuptial agreement, already signed, already waiting. If you've ever been discarded the moment life got hard, keep watching, because what happened next flipped everything. And the way he stayed calm is the real lesson. The prenup was signed 8 years earlier, dated the week after our honeymoon, as if love belonged in a cabinet. I remember that night at our kitchen table, Soleil smiling too brightly while her nails clicked until I agreed. She called it responsible, like romance was an accident to ensure. In the lot, I understood she had been preparing for my worst day long before it arrived. I stared at the gray sky, ashamed of how often I mistook calculation for ambition. I slid the papers back into the envelope and held it against my chest like a fresh bruise. I took the 55 bus home because I did not trust my hands on the steering wheel. The heater rattled, windows fogged, and a woman in a church hat hummed under her breath like she was holding herself together. We lived above a laundromat near Kinsman, where dryers thumped through the night and detergent clung to the stairwell. The door was unlocked, but the apartment was emptied of her scent. Soleil's closet side was bare, hangers lined up like soldiers. My coffee mug sat alone on the rack, taunting. Even the silence sounded practiced, like her decision. I dropped the prenup beside stacked bills and tried to follow my routine anyway. Rinse hands, fill kettle, grind beans, breathe. Halfway through, I realized I was making coffee for 2 out of muscle memory, and that small mistake hurt more than the layoff. I sat on the couch and let memories arrive in jagged pieces. At our anniversary dinner in Shaker Heights, she counted the tip out loud. On vacation at Puddin' Bay, she tracked every expense while I watched the water. I called it ambition because admitting it was strategy felt worse. I should have listened earlier. By morning, my pride felt like a stone in my ribs. I walked to the corner store on East 79th, bought a newspaper I did not read, and stood under the awning while sleet leaned sideways. I kept checking my phone, not for an apology, but to see if the world still had rules. My father used to wake me at dawn for runs, no excuses, telling me traction matters more than comfort. I used to roll my eyes and jog anyway. Now I wished I had asked him how to rebuild when you are tired of rebuilding. For real. Around noon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it die, convinced nothing good could reach me in that apartment. A calm woman introduced herself as Marlo Gaines, attorney with Dunbar, Kersey, and Pike, calling about the estate of my great-uncle, Ellington Whitlock. I had met Uncle Link twice at funerals, always quiet, always watching. Marlo said, carefully, that I was the sole heir. Then she added the figure, approximately $500 million. The laundromat dryers below thumped like distant drums as my mind tried to stay upright. I laughed once, then felt nothing else. Marlo asked if I was somewhere safe, if I could write down steps, if I had identification ready. Her voice did not sound like a scam. It sounded like procedure. After we scheduled a meeting, I sat on the floor with my back against the couch and stared at the prenup. Suspicion crawled in. Had Soleil known? Was that why she watched my promotions like weather reports? I remembered Uncle Link handing me a small wooden box when I was 16, telling me patience is a weapon. Back then I smiled. Now those words landed like a lock clicking shut. I opened my laptop and searched my uncle's name until my eyes burned. There were old articles about a logistics company he sold, a scholarship fund he never advertised, and a shipping technology firm headquartered in Atlanta. Nothing flashy, no scandals, just quiet accumulation that made the inheritance feel more real, and it made Soleil's timing feel uglier. I forced myself to breathe through the nausea and wrote a list of my journal the way I used to write shift notes. Verify, secure, separate, protect. Celebration could wait. Protection could not. I had ignored red flags because I hated conflict. The next morning I walked into Dunbar, Kersey, and Pike, hand steady, stomach knot. Marlowe slid a folder across a table that smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh paper. She explained the trust in plain language. Assets diversified, properties in 3 states, controlling shares in the Atlanta firm, and cash placed to minimize chaos. My role was beneficiary and decision-maker, but only after verification, a financial education course, and independent counsel of my choosing. I respected that my uncle had built guardrails, even for me. When Marlowe asked about my marital status, I answered once and did not elaborate. On the way home, I stopped at a public library and called Keziah Rowe, a family law attorney my cousin recommended. Her voice was soft but direct. She asked for the prenup, the timeline, and whether Soleil had moved money. Then she told me the first rule. Stop explaining yourself to someone who already decided your value. That evening, I boxed Soleil's leftover things without drama. A scarf, a bracelet, a framed photo she once called lucky. I labeled the box with her name and the date she left, and slid it on the bed like a record for proof. The first week after the layoff, I treated my days like training. I woke at 5:10 a.m., ran along the lakefront, then came back to shower and cook eggs slowly, the way my grandmother taught me. When anxiety hit, I washed dishes that were already clean because motion kept me from spiraling. I read about trust and foundations until my eyes ached, highlighting clauses and writing questions for Marlowe. I did not buy a car. I did not tell anyone about the money. I practiced sitting still with discomfort because that was the only muscle I had neglected. Soleil broke her silence on day 4 of the text. Are you okay? No apology, no ownership, just a question designed to collect data. I stared at it longer than I should have, then set the phone down. That afternoon, I rode the bus to a barbershop off Buckeye, sat in the waiting area, and listened to men talk about layoffs, rent, and how quickly people vanish when money gets tight. One man said, "Folks love you when you're useful." I felt the sentence settle in my chest like a weight, and I knew I would not chase her. 2 weeks later, our landlord called, awkward and cautious. Soleil had asked to remove her name from the lease and hinted that I might be unstable without work. I thanked him and emailed proof of rent paid to the end of the term, plus a letter stating any changes required my signature. When I hit send, my hand stayed steady. In the marriage, my calm was treated like weakness. Now it was leverage, and Soleil was trying to rewrite me as a problem, so her exit looked clean. That realization stung. I promised myself I would not help her lie. I saw Soleil again in a coffee shop near Playhouse Square. Late afternoon, winter light thin on the tables. I arrived early and sat facing the door. She walked in with a new coat and a practiced smile, nails clicking on the counter as she paid. When she noticed me, the smile softened, but her eyes stayed alert, measuring. She sat without asking. "Jabari," she said, voice sweet, "I just want to check on you." I nodded once. "I'm managing," I replied, and let the word end the sentence. Her eyebrows lifted, like she expected a confession. Or a plea. Soleil tried warm first. "I didn't want to leave," she said, tapping her nails against the cup Hertel. Then she shifted into practicality, talking about the economy and how couples struggle. She spoke as if our marriage was a business plan, that hit a delay. I listened, because silence makes people reveal their real goal. When she asked whether I had found anything yet, I said, "I'm handling it." Her mouth tightened. She wanted numbers, not feelings. I let her walk out without giving either, and my chest finally loosened. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent and loud anyway. Keziah filed a divorce the next week, slow and clean, because I refused to rush anything tied to my future. Soleil's attorney requested mediation, and implied my layoff had confused me. Keziah replied, we would proceed under the terms Soleil drafted and presented. Soleil called, then called again. I let every call go to voicemail and listened once, saving each message like a receipt. Her tone shifted by degrees. Concern, irritation, anger dressed as worry. I did not debate her voice. I finished a required course, asked Marlowe hard questions, and stayed quiet around people who live for gossip daily. The Atlanta firm needed a shareholder meeting by early spring. I flew down in March with one carry-on, wearing a charcoal suit. In the airport, families rushed and travelers barked into headsets. Proof the world never pauses for heartbreak. I stayed near College Park, not in luxury, because I wanted discipline to lead my choices. The office sat in a renovated building. I listened longer than I spoke, asked about operations, and watched who answered directly versus who performed. My uncle left me money, but he also left me a test. Stay grounded when strangers start calling you sir. Back in Cleveland, I took consulting with a nonprofit that helped laid-off workers retrain. I did it to stay close to real life, not because I needed money. My mornings stayed the same: run, shower, coffee, journal. When shame hit, I played a jazz record my uncle mailed me, still sealed like a warning. I began therapy because pride can stretch pain into something permanent. My therapist asked what I avoided most, and I admitted confrontation. She said, silence is only strength when you choose it. That line followed me whenever I wanted to text Soleil, just to stop feeling small. Soleil's consequences did not arrive as thunder. They came as invoices and small humiliations. A friend stopped returning calls. The new man in her photos, a trainer named Desmond, posted loyalty quotes, then vanished from her feed. Soleil began selling designer pieces online and called it spring cleaning. She moved from the condo she bragged about to a smaller unit off Euclid, cropping backgrounds so nobody noticed. When she saw my aunt at a grocery store, she smiled too hard and asked casual questions about me. My aunt told me later, that girl is counting, and I believed her again. In August, the probate filings became public. A local business blog ran a piece naming me as heir, and my phone turned into a slot machine of unknown numbers. Old classmates wanted to catch up. Distant relatives remembered birthdays. Men with business plans promised guaranteed returns. Soleil's call came that night. I watched it ring while my kettle whistled, then let it die. A minute later, she texted, we need to talk now. The demand made my jaw tighten. I forwarded the message to Keziah, blocked the number, and went back to making tea like my hands belonged to me. Soleil tried again through a new email address. The message was longer, less polished, and it revealed more than she meant to show. She wrote about rent increases, friends who stopped answering, and a car note she could not refinance. She blamed bad influences and claimed she had been misled by people promising a better life. Then she hit her real point. I know you have resources. I stared at that line until it stopped surprising me. I archived the email, sent a copy to Keziah, and did not reply. My silence was not punishment. It was boundary. For good. In late April, I accepted a fundraising gala invitation in Atlanta from one of my uncle's former partners. I used to avoid rooms like that because they made me feel borrowed. Then I remembered Uncle Link's warning. Wealth is loud by default, so you either shape it or it shapes you. The venue was a warehouse with chandeliers and brick, conversations measured. I moved slowly, listening. Then Soleil entered with women in gowns, laughter, phones angled. Her smile froze for a beat when she saw me, then returned. I stayed where I was and let her decide whether to approach. Soleil approached like we were still married, as if the parking lot envelope never existed. She stopped close, tapped her nails on her clutch, and said, "Jabari, I didn't know you'd be here." Her eyes swept my suit and posture, hunting for clues. I kept my voice even. "Neither did I said. She tried memories and inside jokes, testing whether I would soften. I answered in short sentences, because long ones invite edits. When she asked if I was doing well, I said, "I'm stable." She blinked at the word, then smiled again, recalculating. Her nails paused and resumed. During dinner, the host described a technical training center plan for the south side of Atlanta. When the pledge moment came, my table captain looked at me, and I stood. I pledged a substantial amount, not to impress strangers, but because I remember the barbershop talk about how love turns conditional when money gets tight. I wanted usefulness to belong to people again, not to employers or spouses. The room clapped, polite and controlled, and I kept my face neutral. Across the ballroom, Soleil's smile faltered in a way she could not hide. Power shifted without noise. I felt it. After the program, I stepped onto a balcony for air, city lights below like scattered coins. Footsteps came behind me, careful, and I knew before I turned that it was Soleil. She stood beside the rail, shoulders tense, and her voice dropped into practiced softness. "I made a mistake," she said. Her nails tapped the metal once, then stopped, like she remembered I watched patterns. I panicked. I was scared. I let silence stretch until it made her uncomfortable. Finally, she whispered, "Take me back. We can fix this." Her words shook, but urgency sat underneath them, heavy as hunger. I faced her and saw a strain around her eyes, the kind makeup cannot erase. I remembered meeting her parents in Akron, her father talking about assets like children, her mother laughing at poor people like it was harmless. Soleil had been trained to treat security like religion. She swallowed, then the truth slipped out. "I didn't know you had options," she blurted, and her eyes widened like she could pull it back. Something in me went still. "That's the point," I said. "You didn't believe I was worth staying for without leverage." Her jaw tightened and the sweetness drained completely. Soleil reached for my sleeve, then stopped, fingers hovering like she could not remember the last time I pulled away first. "Jabari, please," she whispered, fearful under the softness. I did not comfort her. "The divorce is moving forward," I said. "We'll follow the agreement you handed me." Her face shifted. Disbelief, anger, calculation. "You're going to throw away our years," she snapped. I kept my voice low. "You threw them away in that parking lot." She stared at the skyline as if it could offer a new angle. I walked inside before my mercy turned into a mistake again. Mediation happened in June in a plain office near Cleveland. Soleil arrived in a crisp suit, hair perfect, eyes tired around the edges. She tried charm, then shifted into grievance when numbers appeared. She implied she carried me emotionally and hinted the layoff made me unstable. Keziah slid the prenup across the table and tapped Soleil's signature. Soleil's nails ticked on the folder, then stopped as a mediator read the clause on separate property and waivers. For once, she had no speech ready. I felt my heartbeat stay slow and realized my calm was no longer something she could twist. The divorce finalized in September with no spectacle. A short hearing, signatures, and a judge who sounded tired of adults acting shocked by paperwork they signed. Soleil kept her eyes on the table, nails tapping faster than usual. When it ended, I did not feel victorious. I felt clean, like a splinter removed. Afterward, I went to a diner on Carnegie, ordered pancakes, and sat alone. I watched the couple argue softly, then laugh, then hold hands. I promised myself I would never confuse performance for love again. Outside, rain warmed the pavement, and my breathing finally matched my steps. In October, I launched the Whitlock Skills Foundation with no press conference. We met in a library conference room and approved our first grants: training vouchers, childcare stipends, transportation cards. I visited a program site and spoke with adults learning warehouse skills. I did not mention inheritance. I talked about showing up tired and keeping receipts on your own progress. A man told me he had been laid off too and thought it was over. I said it changes shape, but it keeps going. Driving home, I realized my uncle's gift was a chance to be useful without being used. In November, Soleil showed up outside my building without makeup, hair pulled back, shoulders slumped. She looked smaller, not because life punished her, but because her strategies met reality. "Jabari," she said, voice rough, "I can't do this alone." My old instinct to fix things rose. Then I remembered the parking lot and the word nothing. I kept my tone gentle. "You have choices," I said, and she flinched at the word. I handed her a card for the nonprofit and a number for a counselor. I did not invite her in. She walked away without the mask she used to wear. By December, my life had a steady rhythm again. I consulted with a nonprofit, took board calls for the Atlanta firm, and ran at dawn when the streets were quiet. Uncle Link's wooden box stayed on my desk. Inside were two things: a note that read, "Choose your people carefully," and a chess pawn carved from walnut. I finally understood the lesson. Power is not money. Power is refusing to hand your future to someone who only shows love when the numbers look good. When loneliness crept in, I cooked, journaled, and called family instead of scrolling through ghosts. In January, an analyst from Atlanta, Amaris Vaughn, visited Cleveland to review a program site. Amaris was steady in every call, never flattering, never panicking, always focused on what worked. We ate lunch near University Circle and talked about supply chains and community needs. There was no romance, just respect. She asked what I learned from the divorce. I told her I spent years mistaking quiet for peace. "Peace requires honesty," she said, stirring her tea once and aligning the spoon with the napkin. That small precision made me smile. Stability has a sound, and it is not loud ever. The last message I got from Soleil came in early February, almost a year after the layoff. It read, "I heard about the foundation. I guess you didn't need me." I felt no rage, only clarity. Even then, she framed herself as necessary, as if love were an accessory to success. I typed a response, then deleted it. No paragraph can rewire someone who thinks abandoning a person at their lowest is reasonable. I blocked the email and closed my laptop. Below, dryers turned and the world kept moving. My life no longer required her approval. That was enough today. People ask if I regret not taking revenge. They picture fireworks, public humiliation, courtroom speeches, viral exposés. What I did was smaller. I kept my name clean, followed the agreement Soleil wrote, and protected my inheritance with structures she could not charm. I invested in people who needed momentum, not in people selling shortcuts. I also faced my own flaws. I stayed quiet too long because I hated conflict, and that taught Soleil she could set the rules. Therapy taught me a better kind of quiet, the kind you choose. Soleil's lesson came from reality, not from me. In time, on the anniversary of the layoff, I drove past the old office park and parked nearby. The building looked the same, but the company logo had changed, like it had already forgotten me. I sat with the engine off and felt what I had postponed. Losing the job hurts. Losing the marriage hurt differently, because it revealed conditional love. I did not turn Soleil into a villain. She was who she had always been, and I ignored it because I wanted the story to work. Owning that made me lighter. I started the car and drove away without looking back. When I got home, the laundromat below was busy, lights bright against dusk. A kid held the door for an older woman, and she thanked him. I climbed the stairs and noticed the hallway no longer felt like a corridor to an argument. It felt like home. I brewed coffee and wrote in my journal. Silence can become agreement if you never name what you deserve. I wrote again. Boundaries are not revenge. They are maintenance. I closed the notebook and listened to the dryer thump, steady as a heartbeat. For the first time in months, that sound felt like continuity. Money did not fix what happened. It just removed excuses. When the trust finalized, I built layers Soleil could not penetrate. Independent counsel and a paper trail for every decision. I learned to say no without explaining and to pause before answering. Amaris helped me audit the Atlanta firm and clean up contracts my uncle tolerated out of loyalty. We cut waste, hired better managers, and paid people on time. At night, I walked past corner stores and listened to the street. The difference was simple. I no longer beg to be chosen. I chose myself quietly every day after. If this story hit you, drop a comment with one word: boundaries. I want to know who's choosing peace over being used. And I'll pin the realest one. Soleil never apologized in words that held weight, and I stopped waiting for it. Her cruelty was simple. She left the moment my paycheck disappeared, then reached back when she heard about the inheritance. I did not punish her. I just stopped offering my life to someone who treated love like a transaction. My mornings begin with the same ritual: shoes by the door, breath in air, coffee afterward, journal open, plans in ink. The work continues, the foundation grows, and my peace stays private. If she ever tells a story, she will call it timing. I call it truth. The end.